Welcome back to the 2 Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett, and today we are doing another episode of Draft Chat. This will be the last one until the second week of April, unfortunately, as there's a lot of events happening over the next couple of weeks with the tournament and the NBA playoffs getting kicked off in the beginning of April, and I'm getting married in 10 days. So besides the point, there's a lot of things that will be kind of happening here. So just a little schedule update. If you want to hear the full schedule update, that was in the last episode that was posted on Wednesday, talking about the ACC tournament predictions. But today, super excited to talk with Nick Kalinowski, and I got it. Got it right here written down. I told him I'd get it right. I wrote it down phonetically. Yep. Tried to get it right on the first try. Staff writer at the Looney Bin. Also, we'll talk about it at the end as well. Creator of the Molinar NBA draft projection model. So, first of all, thank you for coming on. Second of all, how are you? And talk to me about where my listeners can find you and a little bit about what you do.
First of all, congratulations on the wedding. That's awesome.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I am basically an NBA draft analyst. I have been studying the draft for going on 4 years now. And I joined Twitter probably about 3 years in, and I've been doing scouting reports and all sorts of content since then. You can find me on Twitter at Kali Drafts, Kali Drafts, as well as the Looney Bin, which is more of my long form stuff. And then since for my academic career, I've studied data science, both in undergrad and now in grad school. And so I'm starting to develop kind of modeling to see what teams are looking for in the draft. And that kind of led to the Molinar model coming out about a year ago. So I will be posting some of those on my Twitter and my GitHub profile as well. So.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm excited to talk about that because I told you before, I do look at all of your second spectrum data and synergy, and I try to use what I understand, I think is kind of my basis of my scouting. But I really do believe, and I always have, even it's not because of the lack of understanding, but I really do believe in, I take in-person scouting really, really strongly. Like I don't take that for granted. So when I get to see a guy, I look for something that the numbers won't tell me. And then I go and I'm like, okay, but they do back it up and vice versa. So I like hearing all sides of how scouting works. Is something I've really tried to change about my evaluations. I've only been doing them seriously for 2 years, but I've always done them just pen and paper where I felt about some guys in the first round before the draft for a couple of years. But these last 2 years have been really challenging as evaluators. I think you can agree with that maybe, but just understanding how you feel about guys and how quickly we think they're this or that. And it's been a lot of fun. This class has given me a lot of headaches, so I'm excited to talk about some guys that will shoot up the board. That was my segue to the segment today. We're going to talk about, as this is recorded, Wednesday, March 8th. It will go out on Wednesday, March 10th. This is my encouragement to, if people are listening to this, please try to listen to this before the tournament kicks off. You have an entire almost week. You'll have 6 days to get this in here with you. So we're going to talk about prospects that have something to prove, something that this March Madness tournament will benefit them. So obviously for people that might not be following it pretty casually or are following it casually, that is going to obviously exclude Victor Wembanyama, Scoot Henderson, the Thompson twins, any of your international prospects like Ryan Rupert, Nikola Duricic, people like that. So obviously this is not the place for you. But if you're a college basketball fan and you're catching back up and you're like, what draft guy should I watch this year? Like, I don't know, blank, Mike Miles or whoever. I'm just throwing out a name that people are like, oh, that guy. We're going to talk about those. So, first of all, I would like to give you the floor. Who is your guy that you, and this is no particular order, but if you have one that you think absolutely needs to prove them, and I told you this, and this is for the listeners as well, the context is if you think they need to prove it to you and rise up your board, that's great. But whatever you determined it as, who is somebody that needs to prove it in March Madness or have a good run to help their draft stock?
So I kind of grouped it into the guys that I wanted to talk about into 3 different groups. And I guess we'll go with the first one right here that I have, which are the non-Filipowski Duke players.
That's the first thing I have written down. Yeah. I knew it. I knew we were going to do that. All right, let's do it. This will be its own YouTube video probably by itself right here.
So as usual, Duke has had a very heralded freshman class. I believe they got the number 1 and number 2 recruits, Derek Lively and Dariq Whitehead. And neither of them have lived up to their recruiting prowess so far this year. I will say that Out of the two of them, I think I have seen more flashes from Dariq Whitehead as he comes back from that foot injury that he tried to play through early in the season. Um, but he's still super inconsistent. Like one game he'll look like the top 10 guy that we thought he was going to be at the beginning of the year, and then the next he'll go 2 for 11 or whatever he was against Pitt. So definitely more consistency from him, and if he can do it against the strong quality of opponents in March Madness, I very easily could see him getting right back up in the top 10.
I'm
So
really
that was my
glad.
first one. Yeah.
I had them written down as, and again, I told you this before we started. I had no order, but I wrote the very first one down when I gave you the topic, like plenty of time. I think it was over a week ago now. We finally got this put together, and I said, first thing I wrote down was all Duke prospects. Because Flip, he's in that 20-ish range against consensus. I have the No Ceilings top 50 stock piece that's really good where they bring in ESPN, Bleacher Report, a lot of the major ones. It'll be more prevalent to somebody I talk about later. But Philip is basically in the 20s for everyone. Like that is just where he is. I've been in my 20s all year. I've got to see him in person a good amount of times. I like that you brought up Dariq because you did say you listened to the show a little bit on Draft Chat to get an idea. Then you'll obviously know where I had him to start the year. And for me, start the year means January 1st. He went from 4 to 9 to 13. He's very quickly like just figuring out a way to fall down my board. And I find it hilarious that I'm with you. Like the flashes are there. We're seeing them, right? Some of the defensive ability, you can definitely tell he's not getting up to 100%. I got very lucky and I got a chance to talk to him and interview him a couple weeks ago. And he does feel like he's still figuring out the foot thing. Like I appreciate his transparency, but I also appreciate hearing people who have good basketball minds, like his coach, John Shire. The game that I attended, he goes, yeah, I feel like this was Dariq's best game. I have the stat sheet from the game still. I want to read it. I think it's very interesting for the context. He played 26 minutes against Louisville. That was the game I'm talking about. He went 2 for 9 from the field, 1 for 5 from 3. He had 2 rebounds. He had 5 points. He had 1 assist, and he was a 18 plus minus plus. That was his best game, according to his coach, John Shire. So obviously, there are things outside of what the stat sheet says that I agree with, which is why I'm glad that you brought him up because I just felt like I was on this island. Now, granted, I was on an island at 4. I get that. That was very high. But I think consensus-wise, like we're seeing things from him as he's getting going. All it takes is one game. Even if they get eliminated and he has a 22-point game, like he's never scored more than 20 points this season, which is pretty big expectation for somebody with a talented team. But he's only scored more than 10 5 times. And I say more than 10, he's had 10 multiple times. But I wanted to say anything more than 10, 11, 12, etc. So only 5 times over the 10-point number. It's just not where you want to see from a guy that struggled with an injury who, like you said, was a top-touted prospect.
I will say that you went to a game of his. I went to one as well. My grad school is UVA.
Nice.
So I was able to go to the UVA Duke game in person, and he went on this personal 10-0 run by himself.
Nice.
That made him look like the lotto prospect that we all expected him to be. Like he was finishing at the rim, creating his own shot, knocking down threes off catch and shoot. He was doing it all. And the fact that his jump shot has made so much progress from the beginning of the year, because I think he tried to come back too soon from that foot injury. And that jumper just something did not look right with it. And so I think he took some more time off in the middle of the year and came back and looked like a new form. It looked like it had gone back to closer to what we would expect. And I think the percentages reflect that. I think he's gone back above 40 so far this year.
From 3 or from field? I was actually about to bring that up. Funny you said
3,
that.
I believe.
Yeah. So 39 he's very rare. He's in this very rare category of 39.9 from the field, but 41% from 3.
Yeah.
Just doesn't that doesn't happen a lot. 84% from the line is very reassuring, even though only short attempts. I'm looking up game log is what I was looking at. I was looking up the Virginia game you're talking about, and he finished with 10. So
those are all his 10 points. They're all in a row,
which is great. That's what you want to see against a really tough Virginia team. I don't have the scorer right here in front of me. It just says
that was the one that went to overtime. Yeah.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, with the funny call at the end. That's yeah. We're just gonna call it funny call and we'll leave it alone. I'm a State fan, so I don't really care what happened, but
Right.
Either way, I'm really glad you brought up the Duke guys. I think they're all worth the conversation. The problem is, first of all, this segment alone deserves its own clip and cut out for YouTube. I might just do this because people see Duke prospects and they're gonna be like, "Oh, yay, Duke prospects." So, do you think? I'm trying to figure out the best way to word this because I want it to kind of have this fun, natural conversation to it. Does he have the most to prove, or does Proctor, Lively, Mitchell, or Filipowski are the 5 I had? Who has the most to prove?
To me, I think it would either be him or Proctor. I think Lively has already shown enough in terms of rim protection to put him within the top
Bingo.
25.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I think the offense for him will be the key to develop, but I don't think he needs to do as much on that end because he'll already come in and be an impactful defender from day one. So for the other guys, Whitehead and Proctor, you need to have more of those supplementary skills. Like for Proctor, he needs to be more of a consistent playmaker and finisher at the rim. And I think he has gotten better at that as well as the season's gone on. Like I remember I don't remember which game it was. Oh, the UNC game actually. Proctor was having some real tough finishes at the rim, and I was super impressed by that. Because he didn't at the beginning of the year, he was missing easy layups. It was sometimes really tough to watch him. And for Whitehead, it's basically the all around game that was the big sell at the beginning of the year, and it it turned into something that was like he had no around game. There was nothing there. So starting to see that come back more consistently and on a bigger stage would be great for both of them.
This has nothing to do with the question, but I'm just going to say it because I've been saying it for months, and I want this point to be hammered, so I have receipts. Filipowski has the least to prove. I think that's pretty understood at this point just because of his solid range he's going to be in. By the way, I'm not shocked if he gets drafted at 16. Like the lottery finishes, 15, 16, some teams like, we could really use a big that can kind of stretch it and we can figure out his NBA skill. And that's the point I'm bringing up is we're not going to see him need to prove it because he's shown it all year that he's good.
Yeah.
My problem is the very first list on my ridiculously large and unnecessary spreadsheet, the very first tab for me as an evaluator is what is the one thing they're going to do and have and stay on the NBA floor with. I haven't figured it out with him. It's been 4 months, like for me, evaluations-wise. I have no clue what he's going to be on the floor as an NBA player and be that the reason he's going to be there. He's just, what's the expression? It's like a Swiss Army knife, but or like a master of all, but master of none or something like that. Whatever that is.
All trades, master
there it is.
of none.
Yeah, there it is. So I knew I was beating around the bush with the expression, but he literally, I just can't figure out what he is, and it has nothing to do with this. That's why I want to just say it and get it out there. But like, Lively is a 15 and 12 rebound game and a couple blocks like normal. He's like a 15-point game away from being like, okay. Like you mentioned, like he's probably securely in the 25 range anyway. Proctor, I'm there on Proctor. Defensively, I think the playmaking's improved. I'm with you there. Finishing at the rim, there's a lot of guys in the ACC this year that the finishing at the rim scares me. So I wonder if it's just the ACC sucks and everything. All of these guys I can't finish. They all can't finish at the rim at the same year. It seems weird. That was like my biggest question mark with like with some other guys, like some of the state guards we'll get to. But like Mark Mitchell, all it takes for him to have an offensive firepower game, maybe a couple of good stops that are pretty flashy, whatever. That's all it's going to take. I have him at 58 right now. I mean, that's not like a weird range to be, but like all it takes is one game.
He needs to stop shooting threes. That jump shot form is
with you.
Atrocious. Yeah, it's
he
awful.
made one against Carolina. I don't know which Carolina game you were talking about for Proctor with the finishing, but like
the most recent one.
The most recent one, yeah. So like Mitchell had a 3 in that game. I mean, I don't know. He had a really good game against Louisville. I'm looking at this again just to see if there's something I'm just missing from that game. But yeah, the jump shot was horrible. 5 from 8 from the field, 3 for 3 from the line. Like he knows exactly what he needs to do. He's just not doing it. Because I think this team is poorly built and has nothing to do with what we're talking about. I think we're realizing that. But the fact that Duke's probably going to be a 5 to 7 seed, I don't even know why I said 7. They're 5 or 6 at this point. And that is how we're going to look at this team and be like, really talented. And yet they were still a 5 seed in an off year with a new coach. It's like, it's crazy to think it's just the talent's not working together sometimes.
Yeah, I saw that. I think they posted on Twitter like all these accomplishments, like under their first year coach. But I was like, for Duke, that's like nothing.
Yep.
Normally they're like top 10, win the ACC. But they were like, yeah, we had 20 plus wins. I was like, huh?
Yeah, which is
what we're talking about here.
Potentially unranked to finish the season, depending on teams around them. They'll probably finish ranked, but the one that they do at the end of the year, the actual end of the year. All right. Anything else on the Duke prospects? Because I'm keeping an eye on the clock because I know you've got plenty, and I've got a few that will rapid fire at the end if we have to. I'm just trying to be cautious of the hour that I ask you for. So anything else on the Duke guys that you want to see or anything just about them in general before we get on to whoever's next?
No, just one last word on Mitchell. I just think he needs to show enough to prove that he is not a multi-year college guy. I don't think he's going to be able to do that within the confines of the NCAA tournament. But we've seen it happen before. Malachi Branham a couple years ago,
Yeah.
broke out at the end of the year and ended up becoming a first round pick when he was on nobody's boards. So
Yeah.
it's not unprecedented, but I don't think it'll happen.
Reminds me of Wendell Moore, even though Wendell Moore was a 39% 3-point shooter at one point in his Duke career. So that's a little bit of a different, junior coming out of Duke, ended up being a first round guy. It was very odd, but definitely got a promise. I will let that die eventually, but yeah, he definitely got a promise. Wendell Moore. I didn't have him in that range. All right. So you went with the Duke prospects outright. I'll give you one that I'm intrigued by, and I'm just curious if you even think this makes any sense. And if you say no, we'll move on. So in the No Ceilings, I referenced this earlier, the No Ceilings Top 50 NBA Draft Stock Market Update. Shout out to Corey for that. Like, it's unbelievable. Like, I know they don't pull everybody's board. They don't pull our boards, whatever. Like, they pull the big sites that people actually click on 90% of the time. It's a conglomerate, and this was as of February 22nd, so it's a little outdated if anybody made pre-tournament adjustments. But ESPN, Bleacher Report, Tankathon, Draft Digest, The Athletic, The Ringer, and No Ceilings combined has Jalen Wilson at 34. As someone who has Jalen Wilson at 18, that is me. I think the world needs to see him. I think in the context of those rankings, I think this is not my personal one. I just think that all of those sites need him to. Does that make sense? Am I framing this right? Like, however the context of it is, he needs to prove to the world that even though he's done it all year, he's National Player of the Year contender, like unbelievable shot maker, awesome facilitator for them, even though he's a 6'8" wing. I get it. Like, I'm there. I'm not explaining that to anybody. Like, the 18 proves that, right? But I think the world needs to kind of come around on Jalen Wilson, and if he goes on to lead them to a national title berth or win, maybe that happens.
Leading a team to a national title will definitely do it. Oshai Abaji, look at just last year, led Kansas to the national title.
Love it.
Jumped into the lottery. I will say, I may be a little biased here. My first impression of Jalen Wilson was ball stopper extraordinaire. Never saw a shot he didn't like, but I think he has developed as he's gone on through the years, that facilitating game, as you mentioned. I'm still conflicted on where to put him. I don't think I'll put him at 18, but I think he's definitely worth at least a second round flyer at this point. He's just too good of a scorer to do that, to be left undrafted at a high level too. Big 12 is looking like the best conference in college basketball this year, and he's dominating. So hard to leave a guy like that out.
Yeah, it sounds like you fall right into that. Needs to prove it for you too. So, and that's okay because, again, I understand that I have him, like, again, NBA ability or role. I just put reliable player. Like, I just put reliable. I get the shot chucking thing can happen, but like in an NBA context, his size, and I would love to see his official wingspan. I'm one of those people that do not trust any wingspan rumor article. I don't care unless I see a picture of someone measuring him. If the combine doesn't do it, it ain't right. That's just how I am. I'd love to see his wingspan. I think it's a little bit bigger than 6'8", obviously, of his height there. Just overall, I think he can be an impactful NBA offensive player in the right spots. Almost like a what's the example I'm looking for? Almost like a Malik Beasley. Like, Malik Beasley doesn't wow you in any way, but he's a capable defender, slightly above average, and he's an efficient offensive player, as in just shoots threes from the corner at a decent clip. I don't see why Jalen Wilson couldn't do that, and I think he's probably going to be better than that. So, obviously 18, and I'm still working on his evaluation. I have a lot to think about when it comes to the NBA ability and role. The fact that reliability is something I already think of him. I don't know. I think there's some stuff to be written there, whether it's for me or for someone else. But
also, if you're a difficult shot maker, I think there will always be a place for you.
Aha. Well, Bryce Sensabaugh is not coming up today, and I have his NBA thing as can make anything within any reason. So whatever, right? Like, I'm with you. I think it's become such a joke that, like, shot making, like tough shot making was like okay, but you just can't get separation thing for so many years.
Yeah.
I feel like this year, of everybody I talk to and trust, it's like, why is it all of a sudden becoming a like reliable skill now that people are like, you did that for long enough, we probably should believe in it. Makes no sense to me. Like, I've always felt that way. Monta Ellis, like, was a ridiculous shot maker. Look what happened to him. He was a good NBA player for many years. I don't know. That's a small rant. Thank you for bringing that up.
Speaking of Bryce Sensabaugh, Marcus Sasser went to the G League Combine last year, almost had no hype and had to come back.
Yeah.
This year I've seen him really high on some boards just because of that difficult shot making skill standing out.
I don't know how much you like. I don't know how public. Some people are careful about their big board and don't really talk about it, or they'll say a number that they know will change. Like, do you have Sasser as a first round grade right now?
I have him like right in the late 20s. So like
Okay,
around
so you
26,
do.
27. Yeah.
Yeah, so technically yes. I have him at 33, which I mean is no knock to him. I was at the Houston East Carolina game a few weeks ago, and he got hurt, and I was like, here we go. Like this is gonna be the same story. Like he's gonna be hurt in the run, and we're gonna be all mad that Houston didn't make it. Whatever. He came back and he looked unbelievable. Like I within like 9 minutes he came back. It was just 9 minutes of real time, not even basketball game, and he just unbelievable. Like I'm there and I have him at 33, and I think that's probably too low, and I'll probably play around with it. I think that tournament run for me personally would actually be kind of huge for him. He stays
Yeah.
healthy. He shows the productivity as a playmaker, and I think he continues to show that he is that shot maker that we know he can be. I think we're there. Okay, so who's your next one? I wanted a little mini. That was a mini one on Jalen Wilson. I've held that in for too long, and I just had to get that out there. I
No, no
still can't
problem at
explain to
all.
you. I still can't fully explain to you why I have him at 18. I just think he's so good. Like I don't know. Sometimes there's just
There
a
are
guy.
some games where I watch him play and I'm just like, wow.
Yeah,
Like,
I'm there.
how did that shot go in? Or like, how did he pull it from there? Like,
How did he
yeah,
know to make that play? Like sometimes it's even
yeah,
like just it's an IQ thing. Like he just does stuff sometimes. Now, granted, I understand his talent around him is ridiculous. Like that has to play into some of that playmaking stuff. Now, if he goes to a really bad team and does those kind of playmaking flashes, that's probably more impressive, obviously. So, all right, who's next for you? See if I have
My
any of
next
them.
player is Jordan Hawkins. Um,
I had his teammate. Okay, I have a teammate of his. All right, go ahead. I'd
okay,
love to hear
all
this
right.
because I am high on Jordan Hawkins. Go ahead.
So for those who are unfamiliar, Jordan Hawkins, UConn wing, extremely high level shooter.
Yep.
I would say that he needs to probably diversify his game a little bit more, show more besides the shooting, because the shooting is the NBA skill that's going to get him paid, get him in the first round. But I think he could jump his stock much higher if he shows more of that defensive skill that I think he does have. I don't think he shows it a lot, but I think he does have it. And if he can transition from like shooting specialist to 3-and-D guy, I think that jumps his stock a little bit more.
Do you
So
worry
that's
about
what
his frame? 6'5", 195. Do you worry about his frame as that defender? I'm just curious.
I don't think so because we've seen lots of skinny wings come into the league
And
in
figure it
recent
out.
years and bulk up. Yeah.
Yeah. It makes me nervous because 6'5", like every time I see him on this spreadsheet and every time I watch him, I go, are you sure he's not 6'3"? Like I know that's only 2 inches, but that's like 1 inch from Marcus Sasser versus 1 inch from Kobe Jones. Like there's a big difference. Like that is a
Yeah.
4 inch difference that is basically 4 feet. Like to me at least visually. But anyway,
I
I'm
will
just
say
curious
for
what you
Hawkins
thought
though,
about
he
that.
does a lot of that off-ball stuff that the
Yep.
NBA loves from their shooters. Like he'll run
Correct.
off screens, he'll go all over the place, like the defenders lose track of him. He'll pop open on the wing, drain it. Like it's really pro level stuff that he does off ball, which is the most impressive thing for me at least.
Well, I'm with you there. I have him at 29, and I think that's just solely because I think he's the best movement shooter, and honestly, probably one of the best shooters in this draft. My next draft chat, if it times out right, is going to be a best in class. Never said this out loud. So it's kind of a fun little audience can take this if they want. Best in class, basically, where it's just we've had 11 months, 10 months, whatever, to evaluate these guys. And it's basically going to be me and a guest picking who we like think is the best skill. Like I'm going to say a skill. That's this, like this guy is the best guy in this class for
Yeah.
that. Jordan Hawkins, I already have it written down. Spoiler for best movement shooter in the entire class. Like he is without a doubt the guy that's going to make stuff off the catch, off the dribble. Like you said, a lot of that off ball action, some of the pin down stuff is really impressive for him. I would love to sit here and break down all of his synergy numbers and stuff because I can't get my login to work. But I have his teammate Andre Jackson.
Okay. I was a huge Andre Jackson fan at the beginning of the cycle. Not as
I
much
was not.
anymore.
I was not, and I'm kind of figuring it out. So, what can he do? I guess this is a good question since you said that. What What do you want to see from him, regardless of what he can prove it? Like this whole thing is just for us to air out like weaknesses of guys that need to improve. Like it's kind of a funny way to put it, but what can he do for you to go up your board because of a tournament run?
I think more confidence in his shot. We already know he's a big playmaker. That's the sell with him. Um, I think during sometimes when I watch UConn, he just disappears on offense for long periods of time. And I think it's because he doesn't really have confidence in that jump shot because it's never really been that good. And I think he has been like left open a lot. And I think you need to make those open shots when they're given to you. Um, and I was hoping to see more on that front from him this year, and I just haven't seen it yet so far.
Do you think he's stuck on the wrong team? Like, do you think it like he's in a different opportunity? Obviously, that doesn't fix some of the shooting stuff, but like, do you think he? Do you think he'll show more of it at an NBA level, very like Kendall Brown esque? I know Kendall Brown has not ran out on the floor and just been this all. You know, I had Kendall Brown as a first round grade, and I think they remind me of each other a lot, physically at least. Is that kind of where you see, or like Jeremy Sohan, really good, reliable player at Baylor, was a top 15 pick. Would you see him being more successful if he had more of an opportunity to be more of a capable offensive player?
Well, I would say no, just because the past couple seasons UConn hasn't been as good as they are this year, or as deep as they are this year, and he still had pretty much the same issues. So I don't know if it's a team slash scheme issue as much as it is a him issue. Like
Okay.
that, I was saying, I was just hoping to see something from him this year because I hadn't seen it the past 2 years when UConn wasn't as dominant, didn't have as many playmakers on their team.
Okay. Not necessarily no reason to address Sonogo or Donovan Clingan, who I have at 60 right now, because I think when you're that big and you can do that many things with the ball in your hands, I think things are starting to just put them out there. And if I'm wrong, who cares? You had him at 60 March
Right.
1st. To be clear to you, I update it every month. So sometimes there are jumps, sometimes there are not. Obviously, the Andre Jacksons of the world could really benefit for me from a run like that. I like how you phrased though Jordan Hawkins. I think there's a lot of stuff there that we could see, and I think they're going to need him to be that kind of capable defender if they're going to win a national title, which would
Right.
tie into this run, which I think is a beautiful way to put it. For me personally, I don't think he needs to prove anything, but I think there are ways he can do it.
Yeah. I'm just saying, I know he's going to be drafted. He's
Oh
proven
yeah,
that already.
he's probably
It's
going to be a
just
first round
where he
pick.
gets drafted.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I think people are going to wake up and they're going to be like, wait a minute, Jordan Hawkins, okay, like that 30th overall pick or whatever, like kind of like when the Spurs drafted DeJounte Murray at like 25 that year. It's like,
Yeah.
oh, Jordan Hawkins. And then that's actually kind of a cool comparison because they're both 6'5". They're both kind of a smaller body. And look how DeJounte Murray turned out. We just had a moment. That's really cool. I just wrote down a new comp for him. No, I'm just kidding. DeJounte Murray's not that kind of shooter. But
I will say that there are some teams like the one that I support, the Wizards, that seem to kind of a little overvalue shooting a bit. So when they picked Corey Kispert extremely high just because he was a fantastic movement shooter, I could see somebody doing the same thing with Jordan Hawkins.
That was how I felt about Franz Wagner, and look how that turned out. I was like, that seems a little high for a guy that I don't know. I'm gonna eat crow on that one for the rest of my life. But
Yeah, I was low on him too. So
the whole world felt like it. And it's like,
yeah,
wait a minute.
yeah,
Look, now they have one of the best duos in the NBA. It's crazy. Anyway, no, the Kispert thing. First of all, I apologize that you're a Wizards fan. I know that that's not what you want to hear, but
it's yeah,
it's gonna get better. It's gonna get better. I
long
promise.
suffering. Yeah.
I really do. I have no reason to hate the Wizards. I think that they hopefully figure something out. So, all right. I will give me another one because I want to see. I have a couple that aren't actually that big of ones like Jalen Wilson.
Sure. So my third group, I guess. So my first group was the non-Filipowski Duke prospects. The second group was the guys who I think could move up, who are already in draft range, but I think could move up. The main one being Jordan Hawkins, and then the third one I have is Noah Clowney,
What?
aka the lesser known Alabama prospect, the other guy.
People are gonna think we rehearsed this. People are gonna absolutely think I right under Andre Jackson was Noah Clowney for me. These are in no order again. Still, God bless.
So
Okay, talk to me. Let's do it.
For the quick background on Noah Clowney, I think he's like kind of Walmart Herb Jones at this point.
That's definitely
Um,
getting cut, like clipped. That's awesome.
no offense to Noah Clowney, but Herb Jones was SEC Player of the Year. So
That's a good point. I honestly forgot he was. That's kind of ridiculous. Yeah.
um,
Well,
he's a fantastic defender, great feel, works his butt off on both ends of the floor, great rebounder. And I think he's fit the hustle guy criteria. So I think the coaches would love him.
yeah.
But of course, there are those significant jump shot concerns. I think he's like 26% from three this year, and the free throw percentage isn't much better.
Right on. Yeah, I got it written down. 48% from the field, 67% on twos, which I think is interesting. 26 from three and 64 from the free throw line.
And I'm just right now I'm a little bit unsure of his NBA role at this point. Because in order to be a four, you kind of have to stretch the floor at least somewhat
Right.
at the pro level.
Reliably. I know what you mean. Reliably. Yeah.
Yeah. And right now he doesn't do that at all. Or could he possibly be a small ball five? I think he's too small. I think he's too skinny for that right now. I don't think he has the build for that. So I think it would take a couple of years in the weight room for him to get to that level. So I'm not. He's kind of a little bit of a tweener. I think you need the right coach to put him in the right role. But I think from the tournament perspective, if he shows consistent development in his jump shot form, because it's been inconsistent. Sometimes it looks great, sometimes it looks awful. So if he shows consistent good form, um, if he shows that stretch four ability, I think I have him right now in that kind of same area as I have Marcus Sasser in the mid to late 20s. I think he could jump up to at least maybe slightly post lotto, maybe 18, that range.
Yeah, I have a couple of people. I actually have three in a row. We talked about Derek Lively already. I have Lively at 34. I have Clowney at 37. And this was as of March 1st, and there's even been some things that have changed some of that stuff. I'm just going to go with what I posted on March 1st for the contingency of it not being confusing if I've made changes. But I have two guys we'll rapid fire in a few minutes that are between Clowney and Lively, and I'll make that a point later. But Clowney, yeah, I left the shooting. Obviously, it's written down, but I left the shooting stuff alone because for me, all he's got to do is just have like they're probably unless I'm not. I hate to say anyone's a surefire like the X, Y, and Z team because we've clearly know that that's not. I don't want to be the guy to say like we've seen a 16 lose to a 1. That's not nice to you as a
Don't
Virginia
remind
fan.
me. Yeah,
I know,
please
yeah,
don't.
but we know that nothing's for sure in the tournament. Like that is very clearly obvious, right? If there's any number one seed, or potentially if they lose in the SC tournament, Alabama obviously could potentially be a 2. So out of the 1 seeds, they're my least favorite, I think is the way I would put it, right? But all it takes is Clowney has a great run. They make the Elite Eight, and he's a big reason they made the Elite Eight. But I think with the expectations, with all the adversity, I think if they don't make the Final Four, it's kind of like a wash for this team. Like it just seems like a failure.
Yeah.
And if he's a catalyst of the offense other than Brandon Miller, and the shooting stuff is at least above what we see all year, which is a hard ask, I get it, then that's all it takes, and I think he's going to securely be a first round pick. I have him personally at 37, and I don't see him moving much, but I think a lot of people already have him in the 20s, and this is why I'm going to reference the No Ceilings article, putting all that together, because I think he actually is pretty much in that range that everyone else has him in. Like I have him lower than most. Like he's in the 20s in a lot of these articles and stuff. And while I pull it up, what else from Clowney or anything else from Alabama, like what you could see from him potentially?
I will say, I think Alabama needs a more consistent second option, and if Clowney could step up
Which
and
if he could be that,
be that, then I think he would be great. Because
So
you can't have that like Brandon Miller scores 40 points and nobody else gets above double figures, like it happened that one game where they won against South Carolina. I think you just can't have that and expect to go far in the NCAA tournament.
so 26th in consensus as of February 22nd.
Almost. I don't know if that's exactly where I have him, but it's right around there.
But it's basically the same.
Yeah.
Previous, they do it as like the cost of the asset. So like based on the average, it's like a stock price. It's really neat. Previously on the first one was 43.7 was his average price or average placement. Now he's 28th for average. ESPN 33, Bleacher Report 28, No Ceilings 27, Draft Digest 28, The Athletic 38, Tankathon 23, Ringer 19. So pretty inconsistent in terms of his volatility there, which is why I think it would be more for me than it would be for the list. And I hate to keep doing that with some of these guys, but I just think I needed to soundboard some of this, and I knew you probably had him in tiers anyway, and you did. You showed up with, this is a guy that could prove it for me, and I'm really glad you did that because I left it up to you to be like how you want to portray some of these guys. I will say, completely unrelated to the tournament, but something I'm looking for is some of his post up defense. I think people are giving him this like for sure. He's very good in terms of points per possession on spot ups, according to Synergy, but his post up defense is pretty average. So I'm looking forward to seeing if he can be more reliable. I think that might just be a frame body type thing that he grows into. But overall, I think he's a good defender. I think the pick and roll man stuff can be a little better. But
That's another reason why I didn't think he could come in and play small ball five right away.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
he'll get bullied down low. Like you put him against Embiid,
He'll
he's
get bullied in a pick and roll. Well, I
he's
love the Embiid
toast. Yeah.
analogy. Everyone would get bullied against Embiid. That's the funny part. It's like I think you would get bullied against like Jonas Valanciunas, like just a tier below Embiid. Like not even just Embiid. I mean, God, anybody would that poor anybody that plays him, right? But I just think like that pick and roll, like he's gonna have to figure out where to go, and like I would almost rather him be the guy that switches onto the ball. Like it just, even though he's even worse at that. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot there defensively that I would love to see, and I don't think we see it in the tournament. And I don't think that's a reason why I should have him jump drastically.
Yeah.
I'll give you, since we keep agreeing on one, I'm going to give you one that we probably both don't have.
All right.
I wrote Kobe Jones, and this can be quick. If I just see a more reliable 3-point shot from Kobe Jones and Xavier makes at least the Sweet 16, I think the consensus would start to rise a little bit. Again, he's in the 20s. Like this is just more of like I'm keeping an eye on the jump shot more than anything.
This might be a little bit of a hot take, but I don't think I'm as high on Colby Jones's defense as some other people are. I feel like he just like runs around, but I don't think he's in the right position a lot of the time.
I like that. 28, by the way, right? Literally 2 spots behind Clowney on the consensus. So
it might be a little aesthetic bias, but I think if the tournament can prove to me that it's not aesthetic biased, he's making actually impactful defensive plays on a consistent basis, then I would be more comfortable having him there. I think I have him right now where you have Noah Clowney.
Do you think are you saying it's an archetype thing and we're loving the archetype more than the player?
Yeah, I think you see a long, skinny wing making putting in a lot of effort on defense.
That's an inconsistent 3-point shooter.
Oh, yeah, must be a lockdown defender archetype. And
I'm having flashbacks to Dalen Terry, who I was not a first-round grade on, and everyone had him in like the late lottery. It's like, I'm having flashbacks to Dalen Terry. But anyway, that was bait. I wanted you to take that and be like, this is where I had Dalen Terry. I believe in the archetype.
God.
It was a joke, but
I was a Dalen Terry fan in high school, and then I wasn't a Dalen Terry fan, and then he kind of like brought me back on the bus.
Okay. All right. So you were in, out. We're figuring it out in Chicago.
I didn't have him late lottery, I think, but I did have him solidly within the first round.
Yeah, and he ended up being in like the 17, whatever he was, to Chicago. So like it was basically where I knew it was going to happen.
I did think he went a lot higher than he should have.
Okay.
I will say that. Yeah.
I just think that's where Kobe Jones is for me, and I really do like him. I think some of the like shot creation stuff inside the arc is pretty good. I think some of the just ability to slash and cut, and I think he can be a capable defender. I think it's there. I think the feet are a little slow. I hate to say that because it's like a lazy thing to say, but I think once we see what he is in an NBA defense, I think I'm with you. Like it'll be like, okay, this is where maybe I miss, where it's like if him and Jalen Clark are side by side, two very similar types, like why is Jalen Clark a 7-time more defender to me? I think they're a lot closer than most people think. Obviously, get well Jalen Clark after we found out what happened today with his Achilles, but Jalen Clark's obviously a better on-ball defender and things like that. So like there are differences, but I feel like the people are creating this gap between the two, maybe not necessarily in their boards, but just in general. And I think that they're a lot more similar of a player. Both of them can't shoot, so it's kind of funny. All right, that was a quick one. I wanted to get that one out of the way. That was more for me than anything. But
also, for the record, if Colby Jones comes in and becomes an all-defensive player like right away, I'll eat my words. I'll come back.
Me too.
And eat my words. So
I'm already prepared for the Dalen Terry thing to happen. Like, and it hasn't happened yet. And once Pat Bev's gone, and they start to give him the ball eventually, and whatever. Like I'm gonna be with you there on the Kobe Jones Island. So, all right, who do you have? I have a couple more that are just kind of fun ones, but who do you have?
All right. So going back into the guys who I think could play their way up into a higher tier, I have Jalen Hood Schifino from Indiana. Oh my! Don't tell me you had him on there too. Don't tell me.
I wish there was a way I could pull this and put it in front of the camera. I really do.
Oh my goodness.
All right, talk on Jalen Hood Schifino. Oh, Jesus.
You're killing me.
Yeah. No, you know what's funny though? He really does deserve this conversation because shout out to Carl from Jimmer Range. I keep tweeting him every time Jalen Hood-Schifino does something fun, and then every time he does like a 4-point game against Maryland, who Carl was at the game, he'll tweet me a picture of the score of that. And like I'm there on Jalen Hood-Schifino. I have him in the late lottery, but talk to me about what you need to see from him because I'd like to hear something other than my own thoughts.
I'm pretty much with you there. I was admittedly pretty low on him coming into the cycle. I was just like, okay, strong defender. Oh my God.
I literally wrote a question mark. You're looking at it. I mean, there's literally nothing written down except for a question mark because I was going to bring it up and let you talk. So go ahead. This is
That's awesome.
I'm figuring it out.
That is awesome. I was basically like, okay, good defender, not great athlete. Um, very inefficient to start the season. I was like, I'm not really sure this guy. I think I may have put out, I don't know if it was a tweet or in a group chat that I was like pretty much sure that he was going to be a multi-year player. And then
Mm.
all of a sudden he just like flips the script and just starts going off and um does these absurd like up and under finishes, awesome. He's showing the three level scoring. Um just massive improvements across the board on offense. And now I kind of think, okay, this might be a guy that teams will definitely look at and think, okay, this is our point guard. This is someone that we'll look at as our point guard of the future. And I think that kind of going back to the Malachi Branham thing, if he can just keep doing it on a national stage, I think that hype will just continue to build, and I think it'll just push him up.
So here's how I would ask it and frame the question, because obviously, I think it's sometimes the next man up mentality where obviously he was playing, even though Xavier Johnson was their point guard, and then he goes down and he's having to be their point guard. He's thrusted into that role, right? Sometimes I think that's good for guys. Do you not? I'm not going to ask from the NBA lens because I think this is trying to stick to what they could prove in the tournament. Would you be more impressed and he would rise up aboard, or you would think he needs to show this? Would you rather see him be a more reliable point guard or a more reliable scorer, or are you fine with him being a combo guard and seeing what he can do in the tournament?
I think he's already shown enough from the scoring perspective. I think if he can show those point guard skills a little bit more, like that playmaking, the
More
handle,
consistently, probably. I
yeah,
think, yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
I would be more comfortable taking him either as a combo guard or as a pure point.
I think I want him to be a point guard so bad that, like,
Yeah.
every time I watch him score, I'm almost like, please stop doing that. Because then teams are going to thrust you into this stupid role where, like, if he goes to the Magic, I'm worried for his career because they'll just be like, nah, we don't need, like, you just play two. Jalen Suggs will be the one. You do your thing, and we'll figure this out. But if he goes to, ready for this? Washington.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, there it is.
I knew you were going there.
Yeah, I actually thought of that on the fly. That was literally just right now. I'm like, you know what? You know what he actually be perfect in? A place where he can be a point guard. Wow. No, but yeah, if he goes to Washington, that's like a match made in heaven. They let Johnny Davis finally come out of the corpses of the G League and let him actually play meaningful NBA minutes. Those two together would be really fun to watch.
I was gonna say, they're trying to make Johnny Davis a point guard, but I think it's more of like a square peg into round hole thing, and they just kept trying to force it in there, and it's
That's
just
a
not
really
working.
awesome way to put that.
And it's not. No, you see the results. I mean, what kind of top 10 pick spends most of the season in the G League? So if you let Johnny Davis get back to what Johnny Davis does well and what made him a top 10 pick in the first place,
Yeah.
then you'll be fine. But I think they tried to take advantage. They tried to take a weak point guard class and make somebody who wasn't a point guard into a point guard. No, Hood Schifino has shown that there are flashes there and he can do it. So I think that would be a proper development curve. Yeah, I would love him in Washington personally.
Two funny things on Johnny Davis. This is unrelated, but you're a Wizards fan and you do draft work. So where did you have him before the draft? Like before he got drafted to Washington, where did you finish the year with him?
Not 10 or wherever we took him. I think I had him maybe 15, 16.
I think I had him somewhere like I think I had him at like 11, like just outside the top. Then, and it's the classic example of why I brought it up. It's the classic example of guy that I just fell right into consensus because I didn't understand why everyone else had him there, and I should have had him lower, right? Kind of the Trey Murphy example, right? People had him lower, and some people like me and a few others had him a little higher, and we saw what worked out there. I'm trying to figure out who this year's like I need to bump down, even though everyone thinks like basically who is this year's Johnny Davis, and I don't think there is one, which is why I brought it up. But we don't have to debate that. I was just thinking out loud. But yeah, I am really impressed with Johnny Davis because I think even though it was in the G League, I think the G League is a reputable place to build your career and understand what you are valuable to an NBA team with. And I literally sent the tweet to some people in a group chat, and literally 3 days later, someone was looking back at something else, and they went, "I just realized 3 days later this was a G League stat line, not an NBA game." And I went, "Yeah, and that's the problem. He should be in those opportunities, especially at a team that's kind of teetering and figuring things out. Obviously, having a star guard already. Somehow we
One
turned
of
this
my
into
main
a
concerns with
Wizards
him
corner.
is that he couldn't create space a lot on his shots, and
Ah,
he couldn't get to the rim. And
yes.
those are two things you would expect your point guard to be pretty good at.
Hmm.
So if you can take the ball out of his hands, let him do some off ball stuff, maybe focus his development around that, becoming more of a two guard and a secondary option with somebody else handling the ball, I think then you'll get the most out of Johnny Davis, but not with him trying to create his own shot and failing.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
he was
just
really bad in the summer league too. I remember that, like right
he
from the
was.
get go.
He was. It was
Yeah,
bad. So just while we're on the topic, we can hit this really quick and keep moving, so we can get to the
yeah,
other fun stuff as well.
yeah.
Where do you have Trace Jackson Davis, or is he even? You didn't even consider him for this list.
Oh God, what a tough eval. Um,
Yeah. Oh, yeah. As someone who has him in the late 20s, yeah, I'm with you. But consensus has him in the late 30s. So I don't think to me he has nothing to prove. I think he's an unbelievable defender. I think he's an unbelievable passer as a big, and I think if somebody lets him shoot a few times, I think that'd be okay. And I think they'll put him in an offense, and he'll be a connective piece. That's it. I think it's a first round talent at that point. The production is just ridiculous.
yeah, I think I'm with you there. I think he's too skilled of a player to go undrafted.
There you go. And
Um,
even if it's not in that late first, like I have him, like even if he's in the 50s, like whatever, he got drafted, he deserves to be drafted.
yeah, like Jalen Brunson was way too skilled to go undrafted, and now
And
teams
he
are paying
did.
for that. Yeah,
Yeah. Which no, he got what? He got like late 40s. Gosh, where
yeah,
did he even get drafted? I don't even remember now.
yeah.
Good grief.
Later than you should have, put it that
Yeah,
way.
fair. All right, let's hit a couple of these pretty quick. Let's just kind of like go through them. So I doubt we have any. We probably have one more left that are similar, which I just again we literally had the same multiple times. I think
That
that's
was
so funny.
hilarious.
So I have a couple I'll throw at you, and then we'll finish your list, and then we'll get to the stuff at the end I want you to talk about. So I had Arthur Kaluma and Terrence Shannon. So two guys that are the literal, if you just open up a dictionary and you go to the word inconsistent, that you have a picture of Arthur Kaluma and Terrence Shannon. So I think just from a consistency standpoint, Terrence Shannon, if Illinois has a decent run, which I don't think they will, but if they have a decent run and he's a catalyst on offense and he's an unbelievable shot maker for more than one game, which is that's the whole point to this analogy. I think Terrence Shannon really needs it. For Arthur Kaluma, for me, I just haven't seen an impactful defensive play in 2 months, and I am starting to worry about some of that stuff. I've always thought he had not the quickest side-to-side movement, and I think there's some stuff there that I'm kind of keeping an eye on. I won't be shocked if he gets into the middle of the second round, where he should have probably been higher than that. So those are the two like things I have on those two guys. Do you have either of them down? And then let's talk about them for a second.
Neither of them were on my list. I thought about Shannon a little bit, but I thought he might have been a little bit too low profile to put on there. I've had Terrence Shannon between 40 and 50 on my posts, the end of season board for probably 3 years in a row now, and for pretty much all the same reasons. I was, I will say, I was pretty impressed at the beginning of the year when he was showing off all his skills and looked like one of the best players in the country, and looked like he was finally putting it together. And it just hasn't happened. It just hasn't been as consistent as he was during those first like 5 or 6 games. Um, yeah, and Arthur Kaluma, I really wanted to see more from him. He was one of my like top returners, and to your point, he just hasn't showed it. I think he has all the physical tools
Yep,
to be an NBA player. But to your point, super. You would think he's a better defender than he actually is.
correct. I think the body kind of just be like, yeah, like Julian Phillips, but like bigger. Like
Yeah,
he's actually an inch shorter, but he just seems like he's a linebacker out there
yeah,
compared to Julian Phillips.
definitely
Like,
got the build
yeah.
to succeed at the pro level. Yeah.
Um, I don't have this one written down, but we'll just throw it out there and then you can give me your last few. I also had, I guess the only ones I didn't mention to you, I'll just give them to you. So I had the mid-major guy that I had ranked that I think people can see. Like I just think if Tucker DeVries, if they win 2 games in the tournament and he's the reason for it, that would be huge for him. And not that he's not teetering between undrafted anyway, but I think he's a draftable player. I think he's a capable defender, and I think he's a really good shooter. So I think if Tucker DeVries has a moment in the tournament, I think teams will be like, oh, okay, he did that against insert Power 6 team here versus he did it against, your Bradleys of the world, which no disrespect to any of them, but it's
Mhm.
different competition, right?
Right.
So I think Tucker DeVries is one I had, and then Mike Miles was my other one, especially after finding out one of his big men is probably not going to play the rest of the year. So either anything about DeVries or Miles.
DeVries, yeah, I've been on DeVries for probably since last year when he started putting up those absurd numbers. Um, yeah, high level shooter. If you can keep that up against good comp, definitely will get into draftable range. We've seen mid major guys who score really well in the tournament get a little bit of a stock boost.
I gave you
Uh,
that one as just like an obvious one, but do you have another mid major guy? I'm just curious. Is there somebody else you're eyeballing like on your personal board that would be beneficial for you?
Um, Not off the top of my head.
Yeah, I didn't have
No.
any either. That's why I asked. I
Yeah.
was hoping you were going to be like, yes, this guy, like Max Asmus. Would he rocket up your board if he led them to another Sweet 16?
I don't think so, just because he's
Me
too
neither.
small.
Me
Yeah.
neither. Yeah.
If Baylor Shireman was still at South Dakota State, maybe, but I know
Hmm.
they got eliminated already. But
Hmm. Do you have him
um,
currently draftable, Sharman?
he's in my like 60 to 70
Okay.
tier.
I have him at 56, and I don't feel good about it.
Yeah, he wasn't as good at the G League Combine last year as you would think, which is against
Yeah.
those like higher level athletes.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit worried from that perspective with him.
All right. I believe those were Miles. Go ahead on Miles, and then we'll give me your give me the rest of yours. We'll kind of just
Yeah, Miles
go
is
through.
just a solid like traditional point guard. Fantastic playmaker. I think he's got a solid handle. And yeah, I would love to see him either play or succeed through that adversarial situation where there'll be even more attention on him because one of his primary bigs, I think Lampkin,
Mm-hmm.
isn't playing. So I'd love to see how he adjusts to that because in the NBA, there's people out all the time. You're not playing with the same guys. So if he can keep up that high level point guard play, I'll definitely have him in draftable range.
Yeah, I currently have him in the 30s. So like, this is
Yeah.
not a. There's nothing for me to prove on him. It's like
Yeah.
maybe just some additional stuff. He's good or excellent in every single offensive play type and
Yeah.
synergy, like spot up, isolation. He's 88 percentile in points per possession on spot ups. Like just your fun pick and roll ball handler type guy that's 6'2", but like I hate to say he seems smaller than 6'2", but he does. Has an unbelievable runner. In the top 5% in the country and efficiencies on runners, like just some of the most ridiculous stuff that you just 6'2", like biggest reason TCU is where they are. I know that doesn't matter in an NBA draft standpoint, but I just think I think if he gets multiple opportunities as a playmaker in the NBA, I think he'll be able to show it.
He kind of
So,
reminds me of like this year's Andrew Nemhard, like a guy who
I
does
like that.
everything well,
Yeah, yeah,
nothing
yeah.
flashy, but just stands out on the floor, will always make the right play. And we see how it's paying off for him in the NBA.
Yeah, very clearly. I had him at 31 last year. I'm so upset.
Yeah. I had him
31.
I had a first round grade on him for 3 years running. I was like, why are you not declaring? Because he wouldn't even declare.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I flipped it at the last minute. I literally put in Koloko. And I
Uh,
love Koloko. I wanted to bump Kessler down, Koloko up, and then him in there. And I was like, I regret all of this. And obviously, Kessler, that was a guy, another one where I was like, I'm just going to drop him further because I just don't believe in some of the outside of the defensive stuff. And clearly, I'm glad I didn't. I'm glad I at least, when I have the receipt 6 years from now and he's an NBA, all star, I can be like, aha, I at least did have him in the first round. It's like
I
one
did,
I won't eat crow on.
I
So.
had him in the first round, but I didn't have him as high as his production is gonna warrant.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I like Coloco's another. Like I almost put Coloco over him at 28. Like I put Coloco in at 30, and I'm like, I still think Coloco's a really good player,
Yeah.
but it's like I'm really thankful that last couple days before I finalized everything, I didn't flip the two again because I don't. It just man, that wouldn't have went well. All right, hit me with a couple more that you have, and then we'll hit the other stuff at the end, or just
Actually, I think
kind of
I
wrap it
think I
up.
only have one more.
All right, good. Let's go.
My last one was from in that category again for guys who I think could play their way up. And I was surprised. I think I was looking at ESPN's board before this to make this tier. That Kassan Wallace is not in the top 10.
Hmm. Okay.
I have been a Kassan Wallace fan all year. I think he's the best perimeter defender in the class. I
Yeah.
think he's a good scorer to boot, and I think he has all the point guard skills that you want. I think I have him as the best non-scoot point guard, like slightly above Anthony Black, but I think they're both around the same tier. And I think if he can keep putting up those gaudy defensive numbers, like I think he had like 8 steals in a game once, which is just insane.
Yeah.
Um,
Multiple
so
times, by the way.
if
Multiple
he
times.
faces a if he faces a good scorer in March Madness and holds them down, I think that will solidify him as a top 10 player in this class. So that's where I'm at with Kassan Wallace.
I fear that people already do have him there. Now, I'm with you. ESPN doesn't, and like I'll just give you this is gonna make you fall out of your seat. The update that I've been referring to all episode. He is at 13. He was previously at 9. So something's happened. He's wavered, and even though he's had the best stretch of the year, which is ridiculous, right? So, and it also makes me. You're now making me second guess. Having ESPN bracketology up because I'm like, now I'm going to see who they're matched up against in this, and see if he shuts down blank player. That would be your analogy. I want to see who it is. I'm just curious. So Lenardi has Kentucky. This is before the SEC tournament began or kind of gets going through. He has Kentucky at. Of course, it's really hard to find. He has Kentucky playing Charleston in the 5-12 matchup, who doesn't have like a key elite scorer, but he would be a guy that would shut down multiple elite scorers. Yeah. Elite for how good they were this year, I guess, as a team. But yeah, if he's a big reason they beat Charleston in the 5-12, yeah, no, that's huge. The next game they would be playing Virginia. So not another, or Virginia or Utah Valley. So not a good example there. But if they play UCLA or Auburn, I think he's going to have a matchup. I'm with you. I think the matchup's going to be really important in March Madness. I like him. It depends on how you qualify Nick Smith as a point guard. I do have him as the second best point guard. I consider Nick Smith more of a 2-guard / combo that's figuring out how to be a playmaker.
I do too.
So if you just assume Nick Smith's a 2, then I do have him as the second best point guard in this class. So then
I think I've gone back and forth between him and Anthony Black, but I think this last stretch to me has kind of solidified him in that spot for me.
I don't think I've ever had him lower than Anthony Black, so I'm with you. I'm Kaysen at 14 right now, Anthony Black at 15, which shouldn't be a surprise to anybody. Yeah. Probably, at least according to you. I'm with you, though. That was good. I like that one. That was like hey, what about this guy in the top 10? Like, what about this guy in the top 12? Like, why can't he rise? Like, Grady Dick's another one. Let's just have some fun for a second. Grady Dick's another one. If Grady Dick has a run and like dude the Ochai Agbaji kind of thing, he's already kind of like sniffing the 8 seed or 8 spot with Indiana. Like people are kind of like, look at Indiana. They're gonna draft him as a shooter and as a could be defender. And I don't know. I'm very careful about the could be defender part because I think he can be. But yeah, Grady Dick's another one. How about that? That's my lottery guy that could just, he just went at 8. There it is. So,
there's always one every year, I feel like.
Always one. Yeah. Always one every year. All right. Anything else? Anybody you've thought up off the top of your head, whatever that you want to throw out there? I'm looking like deep in my board. I'm just like Kevin McCullough at 59. Like that's one. I'm just throwing out names now.
Not until we get into the bubble teams. Yeah. Like if we get into the bubble teams, like a Dayron Holmes or a Terquavian Smith could be on that list. But I don't know if either of them are going to make it. No offense to you as a State fan.
I'm going to keep losing followers if I keep talking about them on the pod. So I'm trying to be less more of an honest journalist. And yeah, we'll talk about them later. And then I have some Michigan thoughts, some guys I wanted your opinion on. We'll talk after recording. But to give you time to talk about the model, and I'll try to find, like you've posted an old one before. I'll put it on the screen for YouTube and things like that. First of all, that was a great segment. Thank you for 50-ish minutes of that. Talk to me about the model, about what it is, your inspiration behind it, a few minutes, and then we'll talk about the Sloan Conference, and then we'll get out of here.
So basically, I am doing data science I was doing it for a class project, actually, and my interest was always in the NBA and NBA draft. So I was like, okay, what can I do? How can I apply the skills I'm learning in class to what I enjoy doing? And then I kind of realized that there's nothing really out there that gave you like a projection for whether a player is going to get drafted or not. And so that's kind of how I came up with the model. So what the output gives you is it gives you a percent value from 0 to 100 of what the model thinks a player will get drafted as, or what percentage a player will get drafted based on all the data back to 2011 from, I think, the Bart Torvik database.
Starting to love Bart Torvik more than I ever realized, by the way. I'm playing around with it. And
I love that all his stuff is open source. Mm-hmm. And so I can just download whatever I want and play around with it and come up with something like this.
Yep.
And I also love that it doesn't just have stats. It has things like recruiting ranking on it. And recruiting ranking ended up turning out to be one of the most important things in getting drafted, kind of unsurprisingly. But it's not overarching. So my model basically combines a lot of factors, takes the most important ones, and applies them to every player. There's also a player comp tool on there. It's still a work in progress a little bit. But if you go on the website, it'll compare that player's stats in the categories that the model considers to every other drafted player in the past and pick the closest one.
So, in terms of, and I don't really have any questions for this. This is more of just an open conversation. I'm pulling up this year's that you had linked in the pinned tweet you have. But talk through a little bit of last year, because obviously we know I'm not a guy that evaluates guys and redrafts them the next year. Like, I don't believe in that. However, we know based on production of last year's class that there are probably some that correlate and things like that. I don't know if you have it in front of you, but talk about some of last year's class that kind of fell into that and you saw like some trends and look how they're performing. Like Keegan Murray is one that went fourth, obviously, and he was a great college productive player. So talk through that a little bit.
I will say last year, what the quote unquote boards that I put out are not really like rankings. It of course it's only caring about whether you get drafted or not. So percent chance of you a higher percent doesn't necessarily mean you're a better player because you could still get drafted in the second round, and have a higher percentage than someone who gets drafted in the first, but it doesn't matter if you both got drafted. I will say that it did not. I will say a trend that it didn't like. It doesn't like mid-major players very much at all. Like it doesn't matter unless you're a 5-star like Chet Holmgren, in which case it loves you. But like Jalen Williams, someone who had a pretty good statistical profile, someone who was super young, met a lot of the statistical criteria that they considered, didn't like it. So one of the things that I adjusted from last year to this year is I kind of put in, I had a binary last year, which was, are you in a power conference or are you not? And it was punishing people who weren't in a power conference a lot more than it probably should have. So I kind of made like a linear scale this year, which was based off of like your conference's like average strength of schedule. So guys who play in like the WCC or the A10 or the AAC who play tougher mid-major competition will get a little bit of a slight boost. So that was one thing that I noticed from last year's class.
I really like the explanation. I'll link everything in the description below, especially you posted this like, well, yeah, you updated this or changed like how this works and how you're changing it for 2023. I love all the explanations. I pulled up, I found like what you posted about earlier this year, February 18th. It was like just the updates throughout the season. Some of the guys in the top, Brandon Miller, Grady Dick, Trace Jackson Davis, another name we talked about earlier, just in terms of understanding a little bit more about it now. And then you go down to the bottom and you look at guys like, guys that I have as draftable, Jalen Slauson, right? Like I love Jalen Slauson. I have him in the 30s. I think he'll probably end up in the 50s, and that's okay. But he's a 2.1 Molinar rating, which I get it. Now that you've explained it, like it makes complete sense. But like I think Andre Jackson, perfect example, 7.2.
He was a lot higher, I will say, at the beginning of the year. He was in that blue category, which I think is above 30. But he's slowly fallen off a little bit.
Amani Bates is another one. He 7.9.
I will say there are some that it just doesn't know how to handle because there's no precedent. Like last year, Patrick Baldwin. What 5-star goes to a low major school, puts up terrible stats, and gets drafted? I don't think that's ever happened before.
And you to make sure I understand it, you determine, like when you put it in, you determine the major and like some of that, like you determine like how that splits up, like where they are and how they're. Again, I told you I don't understand a lot of stuff, so I'm trying to come together here and figure it out.
I don't say this is a high major conference, this is a mid major, this is a low major.
Because like Chet's the adjustment you said you made, right? Like Chet was like the obvious one. Like, okay, duh, he's playing at Gonzaga, which is, people are like, Gonzaga's not a mid major. Like they are by classification, but they are not by strength of record and all that other stuff.
Yeah. So it's basically based off your strength of schedule now, as opposed to whether you play in a power conference or not.
Gotcha. So this year's is definitely going to be a lot more fun than last year's, I think is what you're telling me.
Yeah. I think that's why
like it. Yeah.
Brandon Podziemski, I can't pronounce his name either. He's a lot higher. I can. Talking about funny pronunciations, Stephen G told me it's Podziemski. Podziemski? Okay.
Only name I'll ever give you that's right, but yeah.
Is probably a lot higher on this year's model than he would have been on last year's model, where a guy like Jalen Williams went to the same school and was putting up pretty good numbers, was, I don't know, somewhere around like 12.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Here's one I'm really happy about as someone who on February 1st had RJ Davis ranked in the 50s of my big board, 55 to be exact. I love RJ Davis. I think he'll be a professional player. Keyword is professional, not NBA player.
Yeah.
He is 31.7 as of February. Well, I think your tweet says, you do them 3 to 4 times out of the year, it looks like, if I understand this right.
Yep, quarter
All
points
right.
of the season.
Quarter points.
Yeah.
So then this is the February 18th, 3/4 of the season mark. RJ Davis is 31.7 on the Molinar rating, and Gigi Jackson is 31.4. I love it because now that I understand the model, that looks ridiculous. If someone scrolls past your Twitter and go, oh, Gigi, wait, what is this thing? And then now you're like sending them down a rabbit hole to figure out how to understand it with the strength record stuff. So I really like it. Like Tyrese Proctor is one spot ahead of Mark Mitchell, Armando Bacot, Jordan Pope, Jordan Walsh, Jaime Jaquez. These are all just guys in the same range. Kobe Buffkin, Chris Murray. Like, this is cool. I'm like, again, I told you we can have more conversations not in front of a microphone about this because, like, I just don't understand some of this stuff. But I'm starting to try to play around with it and help it. And I think this is honestly just something fun that you can really, like, use as a landing ground for you. And, like, I don't know how much you take in consideration it versus your own, like, eye test. But I think it's really cool to understand, like, you know, you might not have Ryan Kalkbrenner in the top 60, but according to this, he's a 61.9 out of, you know, whatever, if it's out of 100. So, who's been a really good, productive college player, dealt with injuries. So,
and I will say it's very good at helping me identify guys who might have been undervalued and under-discussed. Like, I think it's really high on Aiden Mahaney. And
yes, it is. 13th.
It got me, like, that chance to be like, oh, who is this guy? And then you look more into his statistical profile and you start to understand why it loves him so much. Because he's playing a tough WCC schedule.
Yeah.
And he's really efficient. So it put me in a position to be like, okay, let me watch this guy and let me see if the eye test backs up what this model is telling me.
I like it, though. Now that you said that and, like, I'm starting to understand it a little bit more, Podziemski's a great example. Like, he's 9 on this one, right? Who's another one? You mentioned Mahaney already. Julian Phillips, a guy that I think offensively is not a lot of people are, like, loving, obviously, but he's 63.6. He's 14th out of this one. Judah Mintz is another one I'm huge on next year. I'm a next year Judah Mintz guy. It also, unfortunately, is now, as of recording this, dependent on where he goes when he leaves Syracuse because his coach just retired accidentally. Oh. So I say accidentally because apparently he did it a week ago and no one noticed. But anyway, that's besides the point. Bryce Hopkins is another guy. Fletcher Lawyer, Daron Holmes, I love. Azuolas Tubelis, I love. These are all guys in the top 30. Hunter Dickinson. Like, these are all guys that are just awesome in the top 30 that, like, some of them I have higher in the first round, some of them I do not. And I'm with you. Like, it identifies guys. Like, I sit here and I'm like, I'm aware of Judah Mintz and I think he'll be an NBA player. I think he's a next year guy. But according to this, he is the 17th guy on this list, and it's somebody
he's the 17th highest odds of getting drafted.
Odds of getting drafted this year. Yeah. Okay, and that's what I want to make sure. That's what I'm trying to make sure I understand and word it. I love Terquavion Smith, who I think is a perfect example of this model. I have him in the top 15, higher than most. I've seen him all year in person. I think it's one I'd take a little higher, and I'm okay with being wrong on him. But this has him at like a 45.6 at 31, and that makes total sense because honestly, he'll probably be drafted, but he won't be as high in probability of. He'll be drafted, but he won't be like super high. I don't know if it considers the order. I don't know if you ever said that, but
the way I treat it for accuracy is if you're above 50 and you get drafted, that's a plus. That's a correct prediction.
50% or 50 on the order?
No, 50%, like on the model.
So Nick Smith Jr., because of injuries, obviously, I'm sure is why he's at 79.
Yes. He's moved up significantly since then. I will say that.
Yeah, have you posted the fourth one yet? I know the season literally just ended like the other day. I don't know if you mean season as in tournament too, but
I think I was going to wait until after the tournament because then
I would.
Player predictions are a lot better at the end of the season, and I was going to include those in there too.
All right, that's good. That's another one I'll look for. Like, I can't wait to see where Nick Smith ends up if they have a decent tournament run. He's obviously come back from injury and looked amazing. So he's.
I will tell you, he's back above 50.
Oh, good. I mean, like, literally in this, he's next to Cameron Hildreth, who just had like an unbelievable game for Wake against who do they play today? Syracuse. So Cameron Hildreth, I love. I think he'd be kind of a sleeper next year, late second kind of guy. It's just funny to understand this now and look at them next to each other and be like, okay, that's not that ridiculous. But that was how we first interacted. Actually, it was the last year's model, and I went, I'm confused, and I tweeted at you. I was like, just explain this to me in 160 characters. Like, I just need to understand this, and I think we've been following each other ever since, and here you are. So
of course, like I could tell you all the modeling techniques that I use, but that's not interesting to you.
No,
Yeah,
I appreciate you realizing that
yeah.
because I'm gonna evaluate guys like, and I'm gonna always want to learn and understand things. But I really do like that you explained it the way you did. Like, it's a great landing point for like JJ Starling. I have him bookmarked as a. I could see him ending up at the end of the year of this year as a draftable player. He's 13.4 on your scale. He's 94th. I think he could get drafted. I think that's a really good place for him based on production. Kalel Ware's another example who's below him, 98. We could sit here all day and go through guys that you're like, yeah. Keontae Johnson, 69th on this. Nice. 22.6 Milinar rating. Like, I totally could see him being drafted in the 50s. Like,
Yeah.
should be probably. And, Caleb Love and some others down
The
there.
good thing is like I know so much about this model in and out that like if you gave me a player, I could probably tell you why they are where they are on the board. So like Khalil Ware, very poor counting stats. They're just not there because he doesn't play a lot of
Yeah.
minutes.
Fair. Okay. Look, we'll play three of them real quick, and we'll give you the 5 minutes on the or what just a story from the Sloan Conference.
Yeah.
I'll do three because I find this more interesting now that you're talking through it. Nigel Pack, second best player on his team this year. I'm prefacing this before you say anything. I think he's not as good as Wong, but people are starting to think he could be like a reach down into the barrel, and he's the 59th pick, and we're like, oh, that makes sense. Nigel Pack. He's 84th as of the 3-4 update, and he's 15.6.
I think he's rated as a junior, which every year you go up in your class, it bumps your rating down. You have to perform at a higher level to keep being up there.
Wow. Okay, yeah, we're gonna have to like tweet DM about like I'm just gonna have some fun with this thing. Go ahead, keep going. That's nuts.
Yeah. So he's still performing really well, but the fact that he's up there in age, I don't have everyone's birthday, so this is how I quantify age is what class you are in. Um,
Do you think the class or the age is more accurate though? You could do the age. I mean, that would be a lot of googling and putting in, but like you could do the age hypothetically.
I talked about this with someone else on Twitter actually, who I think replied to that exact post that you're looking at. Um, Age would be better because then it would boost guys like GG Jackson is probably lower than he should be because he'll definitely get drafted. I think 31 is too low. But if I put in that he was the youngest player in the class at 17, it would
Yeah.
probably boost his score a little bit more.
Okay. I'll give
Also, if you're a young
you.
junior compared to an old junior, that could
That's a
be a
good
little
one.
bit different as well.
Okay. All right, I'll give you two more really quick. I already said Judah Mintz. That's not fun. Cam Whitmore, 50.9, but 26th ranked. Is that too
Yeah,
high, too low? Could be higher.
he was in the Nick Smith category of
Mm,
he was really high but since he had such a low sample size, he went way down and he's kind of been working his way back up
gotcha.
slowly.
This has got to be
Uh,
more fun for you to watch this happen versus like when you post them and people side by side them. Wow, Cam Whitmore went up 68 spots. It's like, that seems ridiculous, but it makes sense now that you've explained it.
Yeah, also it treats it based off of the historical data. So there's not a lot of players to pick from that have been drafted that played maybe only 10 games. So it's not sure how to handle that. The variance is a lot bigger.
How far back does it go? Did you say that? Historical data, like how far does it go?
2011, I believe.
That's right. You did
It,
that's right. The Bartow
it
rating.
it says in the exact year in the file, but I think it's 2011.
Okay. All right, last one, just for fun, and then we'll give me your best story on the conference. I'm debating. I thought about three of them, and now I'm confused. Reese Beekman, someone who I have undrafted, but could see being a second round pick for me.
Okay, the model loves defense.
I knew it.
Loves
19.5 is what he
defense.
is on here.
Yep.
So if you take his defense out, he's probably like a 4. Like, I mean,
Yeah,
not that
basically.
he's a capable point guard. I'm not. Yeah. Anyway. All right, that was a fun one. So Reese Beekman, 19.5 defense. All right, for the sake of I've held you way past your time here. Give
No
me
worries.
your
I got
either
nothing
your
going on.
favorite moment or just anything you want to say about the Sloan Conference for those that don't know. Explain it because I could explain it and it would probably be wrong. I do know what it is relatively. Explain it. Tell us something cool that happened, and then plug your stuff and get out of here.
Sure. I think the analogy would be to talk about it in the context of his nickname, which is Dorkapalooza, as they said in the opening um, remarks.
That's what I was gonna call it. So I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. It's basically the largest convention of sports data nerds that you can possibly find. And I think it was founded by Daryl Morey and 16 years ago. And now it's grown into something where there's over 2,000 attendees with a 1,000 person wait list, which is kind of insane. But I was lucky enough that my school was able to get a certain number of tickets for us to go. So we got 5 or 6 student tickets to go. And it's basically this like 2 day convention where there's a bunch of panels and they talk about what's going on, what the latest um, revolutions are in the world of sports analytics. And I think the panel that spoke to me the most was they had a panel of Mike Zarin, the assistant GM for the Celtics, Shane Battier, who used to work in the front office for the Heat, and of course, longtime NBA player, and the director of analytics for the Wizards. I don't remember her name off the top of my head, but they're basically talking about how they use data and analytics in player development. And they were talking about all the technology that they have going on in the NBA. It's insane the amount of data that they have. So basically, what they're doing, what the latest news is, and this is like awesome to me. It might mean nothing to you, but it's awesome to me. Is that they're going from like normal tracking data, which is just like dots on a screen moving, like a dot for each player, into they're going to have like sensors track 18 points on a player's body. So you could track like how close the hand was to someone's shot on a contest, or like how high that your wrist got above the rim to track things like that. It's just insane, and it might. They said it might like change how they evaluate things like contested shots and positioning on defense, things that normally before you couldn't really measure.
I'm still trying to figure out how to process that because we're talking like, I mean, Daryl Morey gets a hand on that and like he ends up putting together like the greatest defensive closeout lineup in history. And we're like, why did they allow 84 points per game this year? No, but like, I could totally see how that would be. Wow. Okay. I'm blown away by that. That's awesome. And whether I care about it or not, I do care about that because that is like,
The
that would
talk is on
change how we
YouTube.
do it. I mean, that is literally
Yeah.
change how we would watch and understand basketball. And even evaluate, like you said, like it's going to be more of a player evaluation thing. It would obviously change into, I think it could totally shape into something that we see, like how even teams like scout other teams. Like, okay, this guy does this on defense because of what we've seen from this data. I mean, it's no different than where we're seeing the trend go from. And maybe I sound like a crazy person when I say this, but like, what was it, 10 years ago when Second Spectrum went into every arena that they have a contract with and they put in 74 cameras and what, like, there's a reason we have the data we had for the last 10 years from Synergy and Second Spectrum and all those kinds of really awesome sites that I'm really just scratching the surface on. So this is like, I mean, 18 points on a I mean, there's like one, two, three, we have 5 body parts technically. I mean, like that's 4, 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head. Like I can't imagine what they're gonna do with all the. I'm floored by that. That's
The reason that they're
unbelievable.
doing that is they're actually moving on from Second Spectrum. They're moving to a
Oh,
company called Hawkeye, which does that for baseball teams. They like
that
track
fits the name.
pitching motions, that type of stuff.
Fitting name.
Yeah,
Baseball's always been like that though, when it comes to
yeah.
data. Like I get
Football's
it. Like I
catching
know.
up
Yeah.
slowly. They're about like 5 years behind baseball, I would say.
Okay. Yeah, I'm completely. That was awesome. Okay, so I definitely had something else I was going to say about that conference, but I'll just if I think of it, I'll say it afterwards. But all right, plug away. Let people know where they can find you. I've got everything for Twitter. Twitter will always be, by the way, for every draft chat guest. It's always literally I'm pointing at it. It's right here on the screen. The actual link and everything will be below to all of your the draft model, the Looney Bin stuff, as well as your personal stuff. So I'll be right here below, but plug away anything you're wanting to get out there or talk about really quick at the end.
All right, just to reiterate, everything that I ever post will probably be on my Twitter, whether it be model based or long form articles. I'll definitely post about it on my Twitter. So that's probably the main place to get to follow my stuff. Kali Drafts, Kali Drafts. I'm a very nice guy. I will, if you ask me a question, I will interact with you. Um, yeah, I think that's it. That's basically the main plug that I have.
Awesome. Well, thank you first of all for coming on. Obviously, a lot of great stuff. Thanks for going over your time with me. This episode, like every other draft chat, will be long, and that is completely okay because this is stuff that people are going to revisit over the years and months and days with the draft coming up. Obviously, don't have the exact date in front of me, but or I know the date of the draft, but the exact days left. But my goodness, it's basically 3 months away. We're all going to wake up and be like, oh, crap, it's here. So, yeah, I'll be doing a lot of cool stuff with it closer to. I'll be doing like a live stream that night and all that stuff. So, I'll definitely reach back out and we'll get that figured out. Obviously, I'm sure you'll be watching the draft. So, thank you. Make sure to follow all of Nick's stuff in the description below. Don't forget, SeatGeek is the presenting sponsor. I always mess that word up of the Two Pointers podcast. Code 2Pointers. Link in the description below to take yourself to the SeatGeek app and buy your first purchase. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. If you're listening to this and you're wondering where the next pod is, I'm getting married. Don't forget that. It'll not. You just won't. You'll see a gap. Draft chat will be back. I promise. Everyone enjoy the tournament as you hear this. This has been the Two Pointers podcast. I'm Trevor Everett on behalf of Nick. We'll see you later.